Welcome to Experiments in Leadership. I am Sonu Bhasin. Experiments in Leadership is a space where industry leaders share their thoughts and stories about various facets of leadership. As always, before I introduce my guest today, I do want to urge you to subscribe to my channel. I've told you this before, it has great conversations with some really super cool people. And the best part is it is free to you. So go for it. So today's guest is someone who comes from a family of leaders, kings actually. Divya Bhanu Singh Chavda is part of the Chavda dynasty, a dynasty that goes back to the 7th century and ruled a region which is part of modern day Gujarat. So I guess leadership comes naturally to Divya. I mean, it's no wonder then that he was selected into the TAS in 1967. And he spent over 3 decades with the Tatas in various roles. And the largest time was at the Taj Group, from where he retired in 2001. And then began the really interesting part of his work. Wildlife had always been a passion with Divya, and after retirement, he was able to concentrate fully on it. The list of all his achievements in this area is very long, and you can easily Google it. However, the most recent one that you may relate with is that he is a member of the Cheetah Task Force, the Government of India body, which is responsible for the reintroduction of cheetah into India. With so much to talk about, we may overshoot our self-imposed limit of 20 minutes, but so be it. And welcome to Experiments in Leadership, Divya. Looking forward to the conversation with you.
Thank you.
So, question I've always wanted to ask you. Did your interest in wildlife have anything to do with all the wildlife you experienced during your Taj days?
No, not really. Actually, my interest in wildlife was, I was a shikari in the old days.
When it was legal?
When it was legal, yeah, before 1972, when the Wildlife Protection Act came along. And I was a hunter, I was a shikari, and I used to go out shooting wildlife. I regret it now, but at that time it was a different call, I guess. And then once the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 came, I decided, hey, now this is the time to leave my rifles and guns and things alone.
Yeah.
And in any case, at that time, I was seeing a vast destruction of animals, not just by shooting or shikar, but by vast destruction of their habitat. So that's when I took to a camera and started photography. And from there, my interest in conservation evolved. And then that's the rest is, as you know, I moved on to conservation and things like that.
Yeah. So do you just want to quickly, I didn't talk about that, long dhobi list of all your achievements. Do you want to highlight, a few?
All right. In conservation, you mean?
Yeah. In the,
right.
I mean, after you left the Tatas.
Yeah, well, I left Tatas in 2001.
Yeah.
And I already had started working on my cheetah book, which is a story by itself. And I completed that while I was in Tatas, as a matter of fact, in 1995, my first cheetah book. And once I sort of got out, there were two things which were sort of at the back of my mind. I was associated with World Wildlife Fund to start with. And then the then chairman of World Wildlife Fund, Jamshid Godrej, he asked me to come on board of WWF in 2001 itself, the moment I retired, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And from there, I became a trustee, and then from a trustee, I became a vice president, and then from a president to a vice president to a president, which position I held for almost 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
And during that time, one did a lot of field work of conservation in various areas of India. But apart from that, I was also earlier on, while I was working with the Taj Group in Bombay, I was vice chairman of the Bombay Natural History Society as well. And apart from all these, I became a member of the Species Survival Commission of the IUCN in the cat specialist group, because I specialize in cats, which is lions, tigers, that sort of stuff. And also then I became a member of the Cheetah Task Force. In fact, Jairam Ramesh, who was the Minister for Environment, read my Cheetah book And then that's how we came to know that the word cheetah is connected with the Sanskrit word chitraka.
Really?
And when he read that, he said, okay, fine, this is a part of our culture and we must get the cheetahs back. And that's how the Cheetah Project started. And of
Started.
course, now it has the blessings of the present dispensation, and Prime Minister Modi himself went and released the cheetahs. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff I've been doing.
Yeah. No, so you know what? You've been a keen observer of animals in the animal kingdom, and you have also dealt with many leaders and people during your career with the Tatas. So, do you see any similarities between the leaders in the animal kingdom and the leaders in human? And also, I mean, do you see any differences? I mean, what I'm trying to ask is, do the leaders behave similarly in the animal kingdom and in the human kingdom?
Um, no, I don't think so. See, what happens in the animal world
Yeah.
is generally speaking, okay, one can punch holes in what I'm about to say, but
Hmm.
generally speaking, it is a fight for survival and a fight for reproduction.
Right.
So the leadership goes to the person who's physically the strongest and I suppose the wiliest. All right.
Hmm.
Now that seems to be the sort of the sine qua non of leadership in many of the larger mammals of the world, and that's what I have observed.
Hmm.
Leadership in amongst human beings is, I think, a very different, if not different, a very evolved sort of stuff.
Okay.
Because, when you're talking of leadership amongst human beings, you are talking of people whom you come across and who are in an organization who are otherwise not connected with you. Whereas in the wildlife, it's always the family unit. All
Hmm.
right. So you
Hmm.
become either a leader of a troop, which is again
Hmm.
a large family, or
Hmm.
leader of a pride like lions, which is a smaller family. But
Hmm.
it's your own blood, your own flesh and blood. Whereas
Right.
leadership in human beings is not the case. That's a very different ball game. It has very different parameters, in my view. By the
Hmm.
way, I must make one confession. I've not read any books on leadership, so all I'm
Right.
going to say is what I've experienced in my life.
No, but that is, I think, the best way to talk about leadership. Because no matter how much of reading that you do not become a good leader just by reading a lot about it. I mean, if you were able to become a good leader just by reading, I'm sure it would have been included in our CBSE curriculum, and we would have had a paper on leadership, and everyone would have got 100 on 100, and we would have all said we are good leaders. So, but leadership, I think, is earned, and it comes with experience. And since this conversation is really about experiments in leadership, experiments that worked, experiments that didn't work, uh, in your, I mean, when you look back, which are some of the experiments in leadership that you come to mind that worked for you?
I would start with leadership in mind, which didn't work for me.
Okay, let's start with something that did work for you.
Yeah, okay, fine. I'll tell you.
Yeah,
Uh, I'll take just one or two
yeah,
instances.
yeah, sure.
In 1972,
Hmm.
um, that is the Taj Group, took over the Rambagh Palace Hotel in Jaipur.
Okay.
And before we took over the hotel on 1st of April of that year, I was sent by my managing director, Mr. Ajit Kerkar, to Jaipur to see the staff. And it was an existing hotel. So he said, you go and survey the staff along. He gave me a team of very fine people.
Hmm.
And he said, you guys go and survey the team and then tell me how we go about it. Because see, under the Industrial Disputes Act, under Section 25 FF, we wanted to terminate the services of all the people we didn't require because it was the old Maharaja's hotel with something like 300 people working in it. And
In
we
one
want
hotel.
in
Yeah.
one hotel of about 80 rooms at that time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we wanted to cut down all the dead wood. So we had to terminate everyone's the services.
Yeah.
So I went back, did my little research, and I went back and I told Ajit Kerkar that, look, fine, we don't need to close the hotel. We can simply serve this notice. The people will go home and we can start with a new
Hmm.
straight away. Well, I
Hmm.
fell flat on my face
Hmm.
because on 31st of March, midnight,
Hmm.
everybody went on strike. And I was in the hotel and I was get out for 4 months, 5 months.
5 months.
5 months, myself, my 9-year-old son, and
Hmm.
I were out with some 20 or 30 faithful staff. And we simply had to, bulldoze our way through and say that we are not going to to cow down and so on. And ultimately we succeeded, but that's not the correct way of doing things. I consider this as my failure, and I'm honest enough to accept that fact. Sorry.
No. So I think you're talking about it. So why did you think it was a failure?
All right. See, I did a lot of thinking at that time. I said, look, where did I go wrong? Okay. And I told myself that fine, I have gone wrong in two things.
Yeah.
One, I was not humble enough to go and try and find out and talk with people what they were all about. They saw me as an outsider. They said, here is this chap who has come from Bombay and he's trying to take over. See, this is in Rajasthan. I'm a Gujarati, okay? My wife is, of course, a Rajasthani, but that didn't matter at that time. So my mistake was that I was not humble enough to understand what these people would be thinking of me. Okay, one. And point number two, which is really the second part of the first statement, is that I did not know what were the hopes and aspirations of these people.
Right.
What I would have done if I had both these knowledge with me, I don't know. But at that time, I know that I didn't have it, and therefore I fell flat on my face. So I said, okay, fine. Then how do we do this? Because see, I ran the Rambagh Palace for about 4.5 years. And I got transferred back to headquarters of the Taj Group. And by accident, or whatever you call it, I started the HR department in Taj Group in 1976. We didn't have an HR department till 1976. It was only a sort of small, personnel kind of stuff.
Yeah.
In my time, it was called manpower planning, which you don't call it now. But so I became head of manpower planning. And that's where I said, okay, fine. Whatever I do, whatever I tell my own staff in my department or the general managers, etc., I would say two basic things are exceedingly important. And I think they are absolutely essential. One is that you should be seen as one of your own people, and you should know what are the hopes and aspirations of your people, whether it is promotions, transfers, or whatever. Right. There may be a problem at home. Unless you know these two basic facts, you cannot become a leader of men. People may follow you out of fright. Yeah. People may follow you out of necessity. Yeah. Fair enough. But that does not take you far. You need to have people following you because they trust you.
Right.
And that trust comes only when you become a part of them. And this is the lesson I learned in leadership. And then, frankly, it may sound as if I'm blowing my own trumpet, but
Go
for
ahead.
the rest,
Go ahead.
But for my next, whatever, 25, 30 years in the hotel business, I did not have a problem in leadership on a personal level, wherever because these were, you see, I come from a family, as you said, my father was the prince, ruler, Raja of Mansa state. And of course, I was very small in 1947. I don't remember what things used to be, but my father used to say that, look, whatever you do, if you are in a position where you have to take people along with you, you need to be with them. Only then they'll be with you. Otherwise, they're not going to be with you. So that statement of my father remained with me all through.
Yeah. No, I think this is an important point that you're talking about people following you not out of fear, but because they respect you and they see you as a leader. But you've been in, you said that you started the HR division, and then you've been in, really senior leadership positions in the Tatas. How does a leader deal with unpleasant, there are times when you have to take unpleasant or uncomfortable calls vis-a-vis your team members, people who respect you, people who trust you. Say you have to let them go. Say you have to give them a bad rating during the annual appraisal. Say something else. You have to give them feedback that is not very, complimentary. How does a leader handle that? Because, like we've just come through an appraisal time in the corporate world. And I find it amazing that the appraisal time is feared and dreaded by both the bosses and the appraisees, because you know the bosses don't like to, they're very uncomfortable giving bad news, and the appraisees anyway are anxious कि हमारा increment रुक जाएगा, हमारा promotion रुक जाएगा, जो भी है. But how does a leader deal with this?
See, there are, again, I think there are one or two basic things which at least I kept in my mind. One was that, you know, it is all very well to praise a good performer, but a person who's below the line performing, that person needs to be given feedback from time to time, not in a sort of, I'm from a superior position telling you what you should do, but from a position of, look, I'm trying to help you to do this.
Yeah.
You're failing here, you're failing that. That does not wait till appraisal time. If you do that, then you can face and tell them, look, I've been telling you all along.
Right.
These are your paths. You have not followed them. I have no option but to write this down. It is still unpleasant, but it is manageably unpleasant. I mean, ultimately, there is no panacea for being for unpleasant situation, but it becomes easier to handle. That's what I've felt. Whereas praising the people also has limitations, because if you praise somebody too high, that person may also think no end of himself. You know, so that it's a very fine line that you have to draw all the time. Now, this is easily said than done. At the higher levels, I think it's easily said because you're dealing with fewer people. But at certain levels, for instance, at a level of a floor supervisor, where he has to deal with workers, or at the level of the hospitality manager at a restaurant level, where he has to deal with 100 people or 50 people, then he has to be on his toes. You know, because it becomes very difficult. It becomes very difficult to be able to look at everybody's strong points, weak points. See, the other thing which I found very, very interesting, very, very interesting in leadership was that do you really help people when they needed help? I'll give you one instance if you have the time.
Of course.
I became area director of the Taj Group of Hotels in Northern Region in 1981. 81, I think. 82, sorry. And at that time, the Taj Group, we had just opened the Taj Mahal Hotel in Delhi on Mansingh Road. And I'd taken charge of that place in 1982. Of course, there were other hotels also in my remit. What happened? I'll give one instance. We did not have at that time any medical cover because the hotel had just opened. And there were no ESI cover. All right.
Yeah.
So there was one worker, okay, what we call utility worker, which is the lowest rung of the ladder. This guy had total renal failure. Right? Both his kidneys packed up. His brother came crying to me and said, sir, what do I do? He's the only bread earner in the family. All right. Yeah. What do I do now? I mean, I don't have money. Now, I also was at a loose end because I didn't know what to tell him because we had no medical, we had just started the hotel, barely, not even a year had gone by. There was no ESI coverage at that time, okay? And we didn't have a medical, insurance scheme.
Yeah.
So we had something called a hotline to Bombay. You know, you pick up the phone, you talk directly to the Taj Mahal in Bombay. So I picked up the phone and I said, I want Mr. Kerkar, my boss. So Ajit Kerkar came on the line and he said, yes, Divya, what do you want? I said, sir, I have a case and I request your advice. So he said, what is it? I said, here is this man called Ram Singh. He's UT and he's had a total renal failure. And we don't have any medical scheme. What do I do? Ajit Kerkar, you know what he told me? Divya, don't waste my time. Use your common sense. I authorized his total payment of that man. It cost us 20,000 rupees in 1982. It's a lot of money. But that set the scene. That set the scene that, look, here is a management or here is a person who, when we need help, he's going to be with you.
Right.
Now, if you can get that message across,
Hmm.
then when it comes to giving bad news or good news, you are in a fairly firm wicket. I'm
Hmm.
not saying that it works 100%, but I
Hmm.
do say it works most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. No. It's important to be seen as a leader during a trying time. In
Exactly.
the not so good times, only then will people follow you all through. I mean, don't
Yeah.
be a fair weather friend. I mean,
Yeah.
in other life,
I can give you
don't be a,
another instance. I
hmm,
can give
hmm.
you want me to give another instance?
Yes,
Very
yes,
interesting.
please go ahead.
See, in 1984, as
Hmm.
you know, when the prime minister was assassinated,
Right.
right? There were Sikh riots in Delhi,
Yeah.
all right? And she was assassinated in the morning. I was stuck in the ministry for some stupid meeting of some purchase
Hmm.
items or God knows what else.
Hmm.
I went back to the hotel in the evening and there was total mayhem in the
Hmm.
sense that there was a lot of fright, a lot of rumors going around. And
Hmm.
then from next day onwards, the pogrom against the Sikhs began,
Started. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, what option did I have with my Sikh staff?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
opened the hotel and I said, all of you move in
Move
with
in
your
with
families.
families. Wow.
Move in straight
Hmm.
away.
Hmm.
All right. So
Hmm.
a lot of people didn't want to move. Okay, but that was a choice.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
maybe about 8, 10, 15, 20 people
Hmm.
moved in with their families
Across all levels.
across all levels, from
Hmm.
the highest to the lowest.
Hmm.
Now, that was seen not as my glorification. No, please.
Hmm.
It was seen as the Tata way of
Tata.
doing things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
See, I was a very small cog in the whole Tata machine.
Hmm.
But it
Hmm.
was seen that, look, here is a management which sticks by us.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
never had an IR problem in the entire Taj region, in the northern region,
Hmm.
for the duration that I was there.
Yeah.
Not one IR problem. Individual, yes. Labor issues, yes. But
Yeah.
not an IR.
Yeah. Yeah. So common sense is the best sense, actually.
Best sense.
It
Best
is the
sense.
best sense.
It's rather
Okay.
uncommon, though.
It's uncommon, though, I agree. Okay, so after all this about, experiments that did work, well, you actually spoken about experiments that also worked, but any other experiment that comes to mind that worked for you really, really well?
Uh, yes.
Hmm.
There was a strike in the our air catering unit.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
This was
At
Taj
that time,
Stats.
Taj Air Caterers in I'm talking of Bombay.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
Hmm.
not talking of Delhi. At that
Yeah.
time, I was the what was I? General manager of manpower planning or director manpower. I don't recall,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
was heading the manpower as it was
Hmm.
then called,
Hmm. Hmm.
the manpower department.
Hmm.
And the, it was a CPIM union and a
Mm-hmm.
very, very aggressive kind of union,
Aggressive. Hmm.
very aggressive union. So I was sent by my boss that, okay, you go and negotiate with these guys
Hmm.
and sort out the problem because they
Hmm.
had down tools. And in flight catering, if you down tools, you are finished because
Hmm.
the aircraft is there, you've got to load it.
Yeah.
And the whole thing works like a factory, the
Right.
food
Right.
production, food layout, preparation of the galleys, the
Hmm.
loading of the galleys, the whole thing
Hmm.
works out like a factory.
Hmm.
And if there is a strike, that's the end of it.
Hmm.
So, of course, we had to go to other flight kitchens and they took over our responsibilities to a certain extent.
Hmm.
So I was sent to negotiate, and here was this the leader of the CPIM union,
Hmm.
and he just would not talk.
Hmm.
And he said, no, we've given our demands, and you have to meet them. Otherwise, we are not going to
Hmm.
take strike, this, that, and the other.
Hmm.
So I said, look, what are your demands?
Hmm.
Look, these are the minimum wages which are the government's required. We are paying you almost 3 times the minimum wages.
Hmm.
The next, whatever the agreement, union agreement is due in the next 8 months or so. So you need to wait till that time. Just because you say we want more wages, we cannot give more wages. I said, I can't go to my boss and say, give me more salary because I need more salary now. It doesn't happen that way. So he was saying, "Arey, who's this guy? Nikalo usko." Then he took out a chirut. He is a chirut smoker.
Hmm.
So he took out a chirut
Hmm.
and he started smoking.
Hmm.
So I said, Mr. Banerjee, will you please lend me a chirut? He never expected that. At that time, I was a smoker, right? I used to smoke
Right.
like a chimney.
Hmm,
So he said, "You smoke?" I said, "Yeah, sure, I smoke." So he lent me a chirut. So I
Yeah.
smoked.
Hmm,
And that smoke, he made realize that, look, this guy is different. We
mhm,
need to be careful.
hmm,
And I was able to build a relationship with the man, and we
hmm.
were able to solve the problem. Just that chirut smoking, you
Right.
know. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to think on your feet.
Yeah.
It doesn't work otherwise.
Basically, just build a rapport, see what
How to
works
build a
for
rapport.
the other
Yeah.
person, just so that you can get across.
Yeah. Just
So,
how you get it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So, before we end, moving on to the other species that you have dealt with after
Right.
2001, what is the most fascinating aspect of the animal kingdom, as per you?
The most fascinating aspect of the animal kingdom that I see is the interlinkages of existence. Look, you take an
Interlinkages
animal
between species, between.
between
Hmm,
species, and how it really helps the entire ecology and entire what you call existence. We human beings, unfortunately, have pulled ourselves out of the ecosystem, and we are polluting the damn thing all over.
hmm,
But the animals are different. I'll
hmm.
give
Yeah.
one instance.
Huh.
I'll give you one instance,
Hmm,
okay, which is not of India, but of the Yellowstone National Park
hmm,
and the Grand Teton National Park
hmm,
in the United States.
hmm,
The deer population in those parks had grown so much
hmm,
that they were affecting the grasses,
hmm,
all right, because they were chomping it all off.
hmm,
And the destruction of the grasses was causing the erosion of the topsoil,
hmm.
all right.
Yeah.
Not only that, but it was causing the deaths of other small creatures which were dependent on the grasslands.
Hmm,
What does the United States do?
hmm,
US had shot off all the wolves. So
hmm,
they imported wolves from Canada
hmm,
and introduced them into the Yellowstone and primarily in Grand Teton. And from Grand Teton and Yellowstone is the same ecology.
hmm,
They introduced wolves in the Yellowstone National Park, in the Grand Teton National Park. What happens then?
hmm,
The wolves go after the deer. The
hmm.
deer population sinks and stabilizes at the level which can be sustained by the grasses. The
Right.
grasses come back, the soil improves, other animals prosper. Here
Hmm,
is the link.
hmm,
That
hmm,
is fascinating.
hmm,
For instance, you take a small forest. Like let's
hmm,
take the lion forest of Gir in Gujarat.
hmm, hmm,
Lion is at the top of the food chain, as it were.
hmm.
It keeps the deer population, wild boar population under check, which keeps the grasses sufficient but not more.
Right.
Okay, so that the
Right.
grasses don't chomp off. Six
Hmm.
river systems come out of the Gir forest. Now, if
Six.
the grasses,
Hmm,
six river systems, large
six.
and small,
Hmm,
in
hmm,
Saurashtra
hmm,
Peninsula come out of the Gir forest.
hmm.
Now, if the deer population had increased, if there were no lions and leopards in that area, they would have knocked off the damn grasses. And
Yeah.
if the grasses would have gone, the
Yeah.
soil erosion would have taken place and it would have damaged the six river systems that come out of that forest. So
Hmm,
here is the linkage. And
hmm,
it's a very sad thing that we as human beings have
hmm,
pulled ourselves out of these linkages. So
hmm.
we are actually waiting for a disaster to happen.
Hmm. Very interesting. And since you do specialize in the study of cats, or the photography of cats, so why is it that it is the lion that is considered the king of all animals? Why not the cheetah?
Very
Why
interesting
not
question.
the leopard? Why not any other?
Very interesting question.
Hmm.
Very interesting question.
Hmm.
Lion is the mount of goddess Durga, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Goddess Durga came from Iran. She was called Nana, riding a lion.
Really?
She is the Iranian goddess
She's
before
not
Islam
our
took it over.
goddess. She's an
The, the,
imported
the, the,
goddess.
the cult came from Iran. The cult came
Mhm,
from Iran. And then,
mhm,
of course, she became our goddess, of course.
hmm, hmm, hmm,
Whereas tiger
hmm.
is worshipped.
That-
Worshipped by who?
hmm,
Tiger is worshipped by the jungle dwellers, the
mhm,
tribal peoples of India. Why? Because it is feared. Whereas lion, which is the animal of the grasslands, And lion is the only gregarious animal. It lives in a group. It's only gregarious cat, sorry. Other cats are solitary, or they will live in coalitions of one or two. Lions, the whole group will live together. It's called a pride, as you know.
The pride of lion. So they
Pride of lions.
and
That's right.
there is no such collective noun for tigers and cheetahs.
No, they don't live together. They don't live together.
So interesting.
Only the lions. Now, to answer your question, they live together. They are noisy. They live in grasslands. They are being seen by human beings. What does the human being see? The human being sees that he is at the top of the jungle. He's the king of the jungle, not the tiger. Tiger is inside the damn jungle. All right. And people are fearing him, start praying to him. Lions, they don't pray. What does the king think? The king says that, hey, I'm the boss man of the human beings. That guy is the boss man of the animal world. So the Sanskrit name for lions, apart from Simha and Hari and all that, is Mrigraj, Mrigendra. Mrigraj means king of the animal world.
Mrig is a deer, isn't?
Yeah, but here it is, the word is used generically to mean the animal kingdom. Mrigraj, Mrigendra, Mrigadeep. These are all the appellations of a lion.
So interesting. So interesting. So what you say is that because the humans see the pride of lions, which are noisy, they think that he's the animal king.
He's the king. He's the boss.
Yeah. So therefore, yeah.
But so the human king, as usual, wants to be one up on the lion. Yeah. So what does he sit on the throne? Simhasana.
The Simhasana. Wonderful.
Right?
Yeah.
So what is the emblem of Mahavir? A lion. What's the emblem of Gautam Buddha? A lion. What is the first sermon of Gautam Buddha called? Simhanada. Roar of a lion. Really? His first sermon at Sarnath is called Simhanada. And he's called Shakya Simha, lion of the Shakya tribes. He was a Shakya tribesman. So that's where the good old lion is. I've written a book on the subject, of course.
No, so I mean, really interesting. And to tie it back to the conversation on leadership, it's important to be seen as a leader. I mean, if you're there surrounded by your followers, the others see you as a leader. You may not be a leader, but very interesting. Very interesting. And thank you so much, Divya, for your time. And maybe we'll have another one where we'll just talk about all the work that you've done in the animal kingdom and all your passion for photography. That would be great. And yeah, so viewers, keep watching. We'll have many, many more such conversations.